Have you ever driven past a massive new building and just wondered, what did that actually cost to put up? I don't mean the sticker price, but the real cost of every single beam, every window, and every permit. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on how the pros figure that out, using something called the real estate cost approach.
So let's just ask it. How much is a building really worth? For most of us, it's all about location, 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 or maybe what a buyer is willing to shell out, right? But appraisers, they start from a totally different place. They have a method that isn't based on market hype or feelings, but on one simple, really powerful principle.
And that brings us right to the heart of it, the core principle. Now, this isn't just some vague guideline, It's the bedrock, the absolute foundation for the entire cost approach.
And here it is. It's called the principle of substitution. And honestly, when you break it down, it's just plain old common sense. It basically says that a smart buyer is not going to pay more for an existing building than it would cost them to just go buy a similar piece of land and build an equivalent one from scratch. I mean, think about it, right? Would you pay 50 grand for a used car if you could get a brand new similar model for 45? No way. It's that exact same logic just applied to buildings.
So this simple principle gives us a surprisingly straightforward formula. The property's value is the value of the land, plus the new cost to build everything on it, minus any wear and tear or depreciation. Now, for what we're doing today, we're really going to zoom in on that middle piece, the cost new of improvements, because that's where the real detective work kicks in.
So calculating cost new sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? Well, not so fast. Right off the bat, an appraiser has to make a huge decision. Are we trying to price out an exact copy of the building or a modern one that just does the same job?
And this lays it out perfectly. You've got two different paths here. On one side, you have reproduction cost. Think of this like restoring a classic car. You're hunting down the original, period-correct parts, no matter how expensive or hard they are to find. The goal is a perfect duplicate. But then on the other side, you have replacement cost. This is more like saying, okay, I just need a car with 4 doors and good gas mileage. You're not buying the classic, you're buying a modern car that gives you the same function, the same utility, but with modern tech and materials.
So you're probably asking, when on earth would you use reproduction cost? Well, it's pretty rare. It's for the really special cases. We're talking about historical buildings, like a national landmark, or some kind of architectural masterpiece where the original design itself is priceless. It's also super important for things like insurance claims, where you need to know the cost to replace exactly what was destroyed.
But for pretty much everything else, appraisers are going to use replacement cost. And here's the big takeaway. The market pays for what a building can do, its usefulness, not for its old, outdated features. For the vast majority of appraisals, the real question is, what would it cost to build something today that does the same job? That's why replacement cost is the go-to, the industry standard.
Okay, so let's dig into the next layer here. We've picked our method. We'll go with replacement cost for our example. Now we have to figure out what costs do we actually add up. And this is where the iceberg analogy comes in. Because what you can easily see, that's just the tip. Basically, the total cost gets split into 2 big buckets. You've got your direct costs, or hard costs. This is the stuff you can touch and see, the concrete, the steel, the wages for the construction crew. But then you have the indirect costs, or soft costs. These are all the necessary expenses that aren't physically part of the building. But let me tell you, without them, that building is never, ever getting off the ground. And this makes it crystal clear. The visible tip of that iceberg? That's your labor, materials, equipment, even the contractor's profit. But look what's lurking below the surface. These are the soft costs that can absolutely sink a project if you forget them. The fees for the architects and engineers, all the government permits, the interest you're paying on the construction loan, the legal bills. A credible cost estimate has to include all of it. Forgetting these soft costs is the classic way construction projects go way over budget.
All right, so we know what to count. The hard costs, the soft costs. But where do appraisers get the numbers from? I mean, they're not just pulling them out of thin air, right? Nope. They have a very specific practical pecking order of where to find the best data.
And here's how that hierarchy works in the real world. The absolute gold standard is local evidence, getting current price quotes directly from local contractors. If they can't get that, step 2 is to look at the actual books from recently finished similar projects in the area. What did that building actually cost? After that, they might turn to big published cost manuals, but they always have to adjust those numbers for the local market. And finally, as a kind of sanity check, they can look at data from government agencies. But the key is this: the closer you are to the actual job site, the better your numbers are going to be.
So, let's recap. We've got our method, replacement cost.
We've got our complete list of costs, the hard and the soft. And we've sourced our numbers from reliable local data. Now, it's time to put all the pieces together and get to the final number.
And here's that last crucial piece of the puzzle. We take our grand total, that cost new, and then we have to subtract depreciation. That's just the value the building has lost over time. And appraisers look for three types. First, there's the obvious physical stuff, wear and tear, a leaky roof. Then there's what are called functional issues, like an outdated floor plan that just doesn't work anymore. And finally, there are external problems, things happening outside the property, like a noisy factory being built next door. You subtract all that loss in value, and what's left is the final depreciated value.
Now, it's super important to remember this. The cost approach is just one of the three big tools in an appraiser's toolkit. There are other ways to figure out value. But what makes this one so powerful is that it builds value from the ground up, literally starting with the cost to create the thing in the first place.
And that leaves us with one final big question to chew on. We've just spent all this time carefully calculating the cost of a building, piece by piece. But here's the thing, cost is not the same as value. So if cost is just one piece of this puzzle, what else is it that truly makes a property valuable in the eyes of the market? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.